So it's worth a read, the Frackman case. It went to the Court of Appeals. We lost before Mr. Justice Dove, and we argued the same things. But Mr. Justice Dove, I have to say, was a much nicer person to be in front of than the Court of Appeal judges, who really gave, I can remember, me a hard time. Because you could just see they were not interested in climate change arguments. And I think it reflects, and we knew it would, we knew that there would be a problem, but it reflects either the lack of understanding, and it may be that it's different now, 9 months later, but a lack of understanding on the part of the judiciary, and particularly the senior judiciary, and also perhaps a real resistance to arguments that haven't been run on pure planning merits, which is what they're used to, what they've done over the years and what they expect in cases of this sort. So I think there's a really urgent need for barristers, judges, decision makers, planning inspectors, and government ministers, and perhaps they may be the most resistant because they've got their own kind of political agendas. But for all of them to be given a very swift kind of education on the impacts of greenhouse gas emissions on our environment, and how they should take account of climate change when it comes to making any decision, any planning decision. And it doesn't just have to be a planning decision related to oil and gas development. It can be anything, and that includes housing. It includes any industrial activity. At the very least, housing now should be, when it's proposed. I mean, not just should there be some affordable housing in a housing scheme, but it should be housing which is designed in a way which ensures that there is the minimum impact in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So anyway, that's housing. We're not really talking about that. So we ultimately tried to get to the Supreme Court on the Frackman case, and we got nowhere. So that's the end of the Frackman case. But, and this is perhaps worth noting, the people up in Preston, including Mr. Frackman, didn't want to leave it there. They fought that case, but then were quite ingenious in terms of their approach to the continued operation. So not only were protests continuing outside the Preston New Road site, and you've probably seen these on the news. If you're up in the northwest, it was when I was up there for something else. You watch BBC News, and it's every day. There's a big presence there. They're really pushing the boat out in terms of making sure that members of the community are enticed to turn up and show what they think, show Quadrilla what they think about the operation there. But we did bring another case where we, against this time Lancashire County Council, the Mineral Planning Authority, who were responsible for ensuring that Quadrilla stuck by the conditions which were attached to their planning permission. And I think many of them were breached, perhaps minimally, but sometimes more substantively. For example, in terms of bringing in lorries at particular times of day or night, and taking particular routes and so forth. But Lancashire, what Lancashire as the local authority also had to do was ensure that there was a contingency plan in place in the event of some sort of emergency catastrophe on site. And one of the activists in Preston New Road thought that, in fact, if you look at their plan, it was generic. It meant it covered anything and everything, flooding, terrorist attack, you name it. But there was nothing in their plan which was online and therefore pretty much inaccessible to anybody who didn't have access to the web. Or didn't know how to go about looking on the web for such a plan. But it was kind of like something out of the 60s. I don't know if you remember those kind of films, so government films, get under the table with a radio and a bottle of water or something, which frightened the life out of me, I have to say. But that's about what it was like. They didn't have anything specific about what might happen if there was a methane explosion on the Quadrilla site or some other catastrophic event. And one hopes that never happens. But what if it does? So there were people living in, I think, mobile homes only about 350 metres down the road. And Quadrilla said, if there's any explosion, it will be completely, it will be enclosed. It won't go beyond the boundaries of our site. So that means everybody on the site will be wiped out. They'll all be dead, which is horrible to think of. But somehow the boundary fence would stop it going any further. Anyway, we challenged the Lancashire County Council's compliance with their statutory duty under the Civil Contingencies Act, which I think is passed in 2004. And Mr. Dennett, bless his cotton socks, was the claimant. And unfortunately, I think it was Mr. Justice Upstone rejected our challenge. But our challenge was based primarily on the point that there was really little in the Lancashire plan, and they had assessed the risks associated with the use of the site as medium as opposed to high, which we thought was inexplicable, irrational. What we say in legal terms, you might hear this expression, Wednesbury unreasonable. It comes from a case involving a council that I think might no longer exist, but Wednesbury. So perverse. Sometimes I call it barking mad or Basildon mad sometimes, because I don't get on with Basildon too much as a local authority for one reason or another, given some of the other work I do. The point was we were arguing that the council had not properly engaged with the risks. And we brought in some evidence from America which showed that some of these well blowouts can extend well beyond 750 metres from the site. And if you've got a methane cloud as well, and it's going left, right, centre, east, west, north, south, there are schools in the local area, and the advice to them was pretty much get under a table, and that, and so these kind of things really we felt were needed to be addressed. And so that was I think it taught me the lesson that there are many ways in which one, the local authority should be thinking in terms of how to address the risks associated with fracking, oil, gas, whether it be fracking, acidization, oil, gas development, but also how, without getting overly anxious about it. I don't want anybody to go away feeling incredibly anxious about it now, but how the community should ensure that local authorities are kept on their toes, because if they're going to grant planning permission for this sort of operation, there needs to be the contingency plan in place. And I would like to think, in fact, I think it's right to say that the contingency plan point has not completely passed away up in Lancashire, and there might be, if Quadrilla go back to fracking, a further attempt to deal with that.